This is a really serious topic. I have mentioned a little bit before in my earlier videos. However, I haven't gone too much into depth, but today I will be going into more depth with reactive abuse and emotional abuse that is prevalent in toxic dynamics and narcissistic relationships. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ilshira. So, what is reactive abuse? Reactive abuse is when the abuser, does what an abuser does, right? They insult, they gaslight, they try to keep the victim small so that they don't, find a way to leave them, because what they want is control over the victim. So when the victim is without any definitive safety net, and they're just all they're dependent on is the abuser, that's when the abuser has the most control. And that's isolation, right? When an abuser takes away, the safety net of the victim, whether that be friends, families, co-workers, whatever it may be, just outside communication, so that the only person the victim is relying on is the abuser. Now, what reactive abuse is when an abuser abuses and insults the victim, and the victim, after finally, reaching their limit, reacts or defends themselves. They use that defense, right? The abuser shames the victim for their reaction, for the defense, and then blames the victim for reacting that way instead of taking accountability of their own action. It seems a little complicated, but basically what they do is they just blame the other person for their actions. They don't take responsibility for their action. They blame the victim, because that's the easiest thing people can do. Especially insecure abusers and just toxic people in general. The easiest thing they can do is not take accountability and blame the other person for their actions. That's reactive abuse, and that is prevalent in narcissistic relationships, and it doesn't matter what type of narcissist you are, it's prevalent in all dynamics and toxic relationships. Now, oftentimes the abuser usually pairs reactive abuse with other types of emotional abuse, which goes from gaslighting, isolation, control, possessiveness, insulting, jabbing, undermining the person's self-worth, and triangulation tactics and coercive threats. I'll go more in depth with each one of them. Now, gaslighting is when a person, so two people can have different perceptions of the same situation, right? Now, the victim and the abuser, they both have experienced the same experience, right? Experienced the same situation. The victim has their side of the story, and then the abuser has their side of the story. The abuser oftentimes is the one that twists the story and makes the victim believe that their side of the story is true. Basically, dismissing and diminishing their version of the situation or story. For example, if the victim speaks up about the situation, maybe this person is, taking too much, control, or that this person is maybe stepping a little bit too much with their boundaries, and they speak up about it, the abuser then says, oh, you don't care that, oh my gosh, I care about you so much, and this is what I'm getting back, or you're overreacting. I'm not doing this for control. I'm not doing this for etc., etc. And then the victim then questions, okay, is what my perception of the situation true, Or am I just overreacting? And then the victim starts doubting their own perception of a certain situation. By the way, if you want to know who the victim and who the abuser is, I don't like to say victim, but for this instance, if you want to know who the victim is and who the abuser is, look at which people, with which person people side with. The person that is alone is oftentimes the victim. Abusers love to have clout and just rumors and just stuff. They like to have people around because that gives them a sense of, safety, and that, they can get away with things, and that they're correct, or that they aren't doing anything wrong, basically. Just enablers. That's why most abusers are in crowds and around people. Next, isolation. Now, isolation is exactly how it seems. Now, when the abuser tells the victim, sows seeds of doubt in the victim, like, okay, maybe your friend is not as nice as you might think, because this friend did this or that and that and this. And they can conjure up with, like, a bunch of lies that they just pulled out of their pocket. Like, and it's, like, not even true. So, what their task and what their goal is to get you, or get the victim, to isolate, to be alone. So the only person they can depend on is the abuser. Because if they have other people around, they can actually tell the person or knock some sense into them that, maybe this person is not a good person for you. Maybe this person is not a right fit for you, And then feeds you lies and false, twisted truths, essentially, about a circumstance. Now, next thing, control or possessiveness. Now, this is really prevalent in toxic dynamics, narcissistic relationships, just in a lot of toxic dynamics. So what the abuser does is they take control of what the victim wears, who the victim sees, where the victim goes. So oftentimes they want control over all aspects of their lives, right? So they want to know where they're going at all times. They want to know where their location is at all times, what they're wearing, where they're going, what they're doing, and with who they're doing it with. And it's most times they're like either blowing up your phone or they're like calling you a bunch of times. Now, for me, what happened was that I don't want to go too much in detail with my experience, but the abuser would blow up my phone with texts, call me insulting names, and a lot of other things, just things so that they can be in control. Because essentially, what the abuser wants is control. Okay, they don't love you, they love the control over you. Number 4, insults or jabs and undermining your sense of self-worth. What they do here is they either give you backhanded compliments or they insult you, they outright insult you, and they name call you, they call you really nasty names, just insult over insult, so that you then run to them and please them so that they can give you good feedback or like appreciate you. Because when a victim is completely dependent on the abuser, oftentimes the victim will then want to do things so that the abuser can acknowledge them. They can shower them with love, even though it's fake, and just that the abuser gives them positive feedback of what they're doing, even if it means they're erasing their sense of self, their self-worth is diminishing, or they're just losing themselves, right? The person just wants their positive feedback, that this person accepts them, this person loves them, this person treats them with the same happy care, love that they initially had in the start of the relationship, which was a facade. So it kind of is like a trauma bond, essentially. And so it's hard to get out of, but it's manageable, it's doable. This is something I only found out after researching about it, but triangulation tactics. Now, what does triangulation tactics essentially? It's a bunch of games. But however, now what the abuser does is they don't talk things through with their partner. They go through a third party, okay? And this, oh my gosh. So what they do is they talk to the third party. It can be one person or a group of people, and they tell them about, their version of the truth, and then try to make the victim look bad, right? It's also essentially kind of like spreading rumors. But so they do that, and they get these people to have a negative perception of the victim, so that the victim then believes that the only person they can trust, the only person they can believe, is the abuser themselves, even though it's the abuser that's been playing all these games, that's doing this. But the victim doesn't see that. The victim sees that, the abuser is telling them that all these people think this way about the victim, and that the abuser is the only one that actually cares about them, that wants them to do well, and etc., etc. And the last one, coercive threats. Now, coercive threats can be about money, can be about, sleeping with them. It can be just anything, really. So they basically threaten you with, or not even threaten you, in many manipulation dynamics or toxic dynamics, it's often subtle. So they keep asking you, they keep pressuring you just till you say yes. Now, what I've heard and what I believe is that if someone does not say yes enthusiastically, that is not consent. For whatever situation it is not yes, it's not a full yes. If this person is just saying yes just so that you can shut up and that you can just stop asking them that same question and annoying them, that's not a yes. That's just for you to shut up. Now, they take that as a yes, and then it's like a green light, and then they just do whatever they want, right? And then the victim, they're stuck in a tight spot, because in one way, they don't want to break up with this person. They don't want to leave this person if this person's threatening them with breaking up or leaving. And then they also do not want to do this certain thing that this person is telling them to do. And so they're in a tight spot, and they're like, should I just say no? And saying no in that situation is scary. And if you haven't been in that situation, you cannot understand the people that have actually been through that situation. But it's not a great place to be in. But if you ever happen to be in that situation, say no. Say no. The easiest, it's better to say no and the abuser to get upset with you than for you to say yes and then later regret that decision. I'm telling you this from experience. Do not say yes to something you do not want to do, because if you do, you might regret it later on. Obviously, if the abuser has some violent tendencies, use your discernment, okay? I do say no with caution if this person has violent tendencies, because what I did, okay, for me, this person was not in person when I did say no, so they ended up just calling me a bunch of nasty words and then hung up on me, right? But if this person is like in person, like you guys are face to face talking to each other, then I would say maybe create some distance and do not meet alone with this person. I started doing that, later on, when I realized that this person was actually toxic and that I do not want to be alone with this person, right? So what I did was I started, if I had to meet this person, I would meet them really late, maybe sometimes not at all, and make an excuse of, delays and stuff, so that this person has a believable excuse as to why I'm meeting this person really late, and, stuff like that. just making a bunch of excuses so that I do not meet this person alone, because being alone with this person is dangerous, it's risky, and I do not want to put myself in that position or that situation. Do not take emotional and reactive abuse lightly, because it can go from emotional abuse to physical and sexual abuse really quickly. So please, if you notice any of these signs, stay far, far away from this person, whether it be in relationship or friendship dynamics. Abuse has no label. It has no packaged way of how it's presented to you. It's not, exclusively something that happens in relationships. It's not exclusively something that happens in friendships. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in familial dynamics as well. So don't take this lightly. And if you happen to be in this situation and you feel like you cannot get out, there is help available. You can search online for hotlines anywhere where you are when you're going through these things. Just know that there is help available and that there are people out there who are here to help you. Okay? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.